Susan with me from PowerUp Leadership, is an entrepreneur in Canada, runs a leadership and coaching business. Susan, we have had maybe 2 or 3 people on a while back that had similar types of businesses, but not in a while. So I think it could be an interesting conversation. As you know, our network is full of serial entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
self-employed people, and people trying to start businesses. So we're always curious to kind of pick brains, how you got started, what are the challenges, et cetera, how you help companies. So to start us off, can you give people a little bit of a background on who you are and how you got into business in the first place?
Yeah. And thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thanks for having me. So Susan PowerUp Leadership, been in business 7 years with this business, sold my first business in 2016. My background, my whole career at least, has been spent in corporate human resources. And in my last job, I got interested in what makes some leaders really effective, where the team is thriving, they're reaching their business goals. And then other smart leaders that get promoted, they just like fall and do a face plant and no one wants to work for them. People are exiting the business is bleeding money. And I'm like, they're both smart people. Like what's going on here? So I got interested in coaching and I got interested in studying what drives leadership effectiveness and started up PowerUp Leadership.
Nice. So did you ever think about starting a business before that, or was it something that, kind of came up in just your head?
Well, I had a business before called Hire Talent, and I sold it in 2016. So this is my second business, and very similar, except very niched and focused on coaching, whereas the other one was, HR services, consulting. So kind of different space.
Cool. Okay. So I guess if you could take us back to like that first business, what sort of inspired you to kind of get started?
It was so long ago now, but I remember being the honest answer is I had just had a baby. He's now 15, but at the time I had just had my first son and I wanted the flexibility. So I moved to St. John's, Newfoundland for, at the time, my husband's job. He was taking a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I remember going into my employer, and I was just in Canada, we get a year off for mat leave. And I felt bad because I was going in to quit after taking a year off, paid salary. So I felt shitty about that. So I said to them, hey, this was like before everyone worked from home. I said, hey, I could do this job, but it's going to be remote because I'm moving to Newfoundland. Will you consider that? And it was a municipality, and it was kind of forward thinking at the time that would happen in government. And they actually said yes, but they said part-time. We want you 20 hours a week to do the job part-time. So the other 20 hours, I started up a business and kind of figured it out bit by bit.
Nice. Okay. What was some of the biggest challenges in that first business that came up?
Yeah, I have to go back in my memory bank. Figuring out sales. I just spent, years in human resources, and I didn't know, I didn't have a clue about how to get a sale, how to get a new client. So I just started talking to everybody, meeting them for coffee, talking to everyone, and really not very strategic at the time, but just trying to land that first client. And I like every day I've learned a lot about sales. I'm sure there's more I can learn, but I laugh when I think about how I approached it before, because it was like just throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like that is it's the one thing that gets your business off the ground, right? Like you could spend all this time designing a service, but it's like if you can't sell, then you really don't have a business.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't have the skill set too, it's kind of like if you're coming from like another niche like HR, or maybe you're coming from the financial side, like learning sales is kind of a big challenge. Have you found like what has gotten you better at sales over time, or how have you kind of like improved in that skill set?
Yeah, it's a good question. The approach I take now is only working with people that I can really help versus initially first business, I'll work with anybody. I want the client. I need the sale. But now it's very much, let me ask you some questions. I'm the doctor. You're the patient. What's your problem? Can I help you? If I can't, I'll refer you to someone. If I can, I'll refer you to someone who can. But let's make sure there's a fit here before we waste any time. And I'm not your friend. When I first started off, I'd be like, yeah, let's go for coffee. Like, I would love to talk with you. No, we're not friends. Let me see if I can help you solve your problem.
Okay, interesting. So walk me through your current company, how that kind of got started. Like what lessons did you learn from the first company that you sort of took to PowerUp Leadership?
I think the biggest lesson I learned was probably from the executive role I was in. And sorry, I hope this is okay. It's kind of diverting your question a little bit. Is that okay? Okay. But working with executives, like I was really senior in the company, like, reporting into a VP that reported into a billionaire. And I learned a lot working with this group of executives that I had no exposure to before. So it changed how I approach business. Like I understood the financials. I understood how it was largely men, but how these men think, how they operate. And it was 2 years of great training as an executive, which now I took to my company as a CEO. My first business, I just kind of learned the structure of wearing all the different hats as a business owner, doing it for the first time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so that's an interesting take, just like me, reporting to the kind of upper management. I've sort of thought about that sometimes, which is just like, what kind of experience have I missed, like not having that experience? But walk me through like your philosophy for running a team, running a company, management. Obviously, that's kind of like what you do. What have you like learned working with your clients? Like, what's your overall philosophy for running a team?
Yeah. My coach called me out on this. So if you're ever hiring a coach, always ask, the first question should be, who coaches you? Because if you're hiring a coach and they don't have a coach, that's a red flag. So one thing my coach called me out on was, are you doing leadership development training for your team, Susan? Because that's the service I'm selling. And while I did have a coach, I didn't have regular leadership development training with my team. And so we started doing this to upskill the team. And I think that's really important because you're testing the service that you're giving your client so you can refine it and kind of experience it from the customer's chair. So that's one change that I've made.
Okay, interesting. So walk me through, like, how do you typically work with a client? Like, what exactly are you selling and doing? Like, run us through the business model.
So typically we focus on empowering teams to realize their potential, and our approach is different than many of the other big names out there. We are very bespoke in our approach. So with learning and development and AI today, it's all about personalization, customization. So we are integrating AI into our coaching offering. So for instance, you meet with a coach every 2 weeks. Typically, when you have an executive coach, you'll have 1 hour and it's booked in and it's regular and it's the right frequency. But a lot can happen in that 2-week span. So with an AI coach, you might have a question one day of, how do I increase my confidence before a big executive presentation? Oh man, I wish I could talk to my coach, but they're not available right now. But AI will give you some tips and resources and tools, and we've integrated that. We're in the final stages of integrating that into our offer, which I think adds a lot more value. Our human coaches are great. It's not replacing human coaches, but it supplements them.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, have you experimented with AI at all, or do you see that kind of like affecting the industry or what you do?
Don't you?
Yeah.
I think it's affected everything. What's that?
I've used so many of them that I feel like there's just a lot of things that AI can't do that you need a person for.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. I think the emotional intelligence piece, the trust, like it's hard to trust AI agent, right? It's like there's no real relationship there. But I think adding, like, it really kind of puts it on steroids, if you will. If you're working with the coach, you're working on developing yourself every day, showing up better every day. So if you're just thinking about that during that 1 hour every 2 weeks with your coach, you're not going to progress as quickly as if you're, using AI to nudge you along.
Yeah. Interesting. What are some of the biggest issues that you see with companies, typically from a HR team or leadership perspective?
That's a hard question. I would say the one that comes to mind is buy-in, change management. So people have different decision-making styles. They have different change adoption rates. Some people want to really analyze and turn over every rock before they make a decision. Other people want to go more quickly and take more risks. So getting the leadership team rowing in the same direction, comfortable with the same pace of change, getting those people to talk to each other, collaborate, work together effectively. I see a lot of friction. Like, since we have all this hybrid remote work, I think the amount of conflicts and mistrust has gone up a lot because people aren't sitting side by side having lunch or talking by the water coolers frequently, and the relationships are paying the price. So I think the change management piece becomes even more important to kind of bring the team together and talk about, well, what is the change? How do you feel about it? What do you think we should, what pace do you think we should proceed at? And just getting the team like moving in the same direction, basically.
Yeah. What are some working with a leader, like a CEO or somebody who's like, the head of the team? What are some of their like habits or sort of activities that make them successful?
Consistency is the word that pops to mind. So I I can share with you what comes to mind from my standpoint. Do they exercise every day? Like, to me, that tells you a lot about a person in terms of, can I trust them? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they high energy? Do they prioritize health? Are they reaching out to new people every day? Are they reading every day? Are they sharing their knowledge with the world on social media? Are they, generous to share their ideas that could help somebody, but may not directly help them, but they're kind of pushing that out there? And are they setting goals and reviewing them every day? Like, I think those are all really good habits for anybody, whether they're a CEO or not, just to get better as a person. Because you can't separate the two, in my mind. If you're not trying to get better as a human being, you're not going to get better as a business leader. And John Maxwell calls it the law of the lid, that a business won't grow beyond the capabilities of its top leaders. So you got to be like every day trying to get a little bit more effective.
Okay, interesting. So in your own personal life, how do you kind of manage time and your team?
How do I manage time on my team?
Your time managing your team. So I think that one thing that a lot of people find difficult as they like scale their companies, and I'm talking specifically about smaller companies here, but I imagine it would apply to bigger ones as well. Which is, obviously you have like your own activities that you have to do as a founder or as, a leader, marketing leader, sales leader, or whatever. But then obviously the team requires time, whether it's the middle managers or whether you're, managing the lower level people. You got to train them. You need to give them like individualized attention. So how do you kind of like split time or manage the time that you're devoting to sort of those essential business activities and the actual like team management kind of stuff?
Yeah, I I have unlimited time for my team. And I know that might not be the textbook correct answer on this question, but if my team gets better, they're going to help the business get better. So far they haven't capped me out on taking too much time. So if like whatever I can do to make myself available for them, unless I'm in a customer meeting, then I'll just follow up afterwards, but I'll make myself available. And then as far as the time management piece, have you ever read Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time? Yeah, so I'm in his coaching group, and I'm a fan. And you'd be familiar then with his what's it called? Buyback rate. So for those of your listeners who might not know, if you pay yourself $100 an hour, he says divide that by 4, and $25 an hour would be your buyback rate. Any task that's $25 an hour or less, you should not be doing. You should hire a virtual assistant or outsource it, basically. And that's how your business will grow and you can focus on the high value activities.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I remember reading that book a while back, but Dan Martell is definitely. My next question was like, who do you kind of follow for advice? So, what kind of any other authors or sort of public figures that you kind of draw inspiration from?
I really like Anthony Robbins. I know he's been around forever, but I did his results-based coaching program to test it out, and I found that was valuable as well. It was quite pricey, I thought, but it was good. So I follow him, John Maxwell, James Clear on habits, Atomic Habits, great book. Dan Martell for sure. Alex Hormozi is a good one. Anyone entrepreneurial is I always try to keep up on that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, a lot of those names people have mentioned before.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question, what have you a lot of companies and just people in general are very focused on like the personal brand, educating other people. Have you kind of started to, or have you always like produced content or created information, and like do you encourage other business owners to like get in front of the camera and promote themselves through content?
Yeah, 100%, because you might not have the same company forever. So it's definitely worthwhile investing in your own brand. So I just did this a couple of years ago. I created an personal Instagram page outside of my business Instagram page. And every day I post a video. So it's kind of like a day in the life of Susan Power, posted on my stories of what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what lesson I learned, who am I outside of my job, and just try to share what I'm learning on my journey with others to push that content out. I think it's helped me a lot reflect on what challenges I have and what I've taken away from the day, the week, or, even reflecting years back. So I think it's a good exercise for sure for anyone to do.
Okay, interesting. So this is sort of kind of like a wrapping up or just like tying things together question, but what has there been any, like in both your businesses, has there been any like super difficult times that you've had as a founder, and how have you gotten through those times?
Well, COVID, you probably heard this answer before, but I think whenever there's massive uncertainty like pandemics or even the tariff situation right now, like sometimes entrepreneurs can get really fearful because they're in a higher risk area by being, or can feel that way. It's not, but sometimes it feels that way when you're wanting to make payroll for your team and it's not just you. So I think really getting skilled on refocusing on what you can control and not buying into the fear frenzy has helped me a lot. Like during COVID, I remember thinking, well, what do I do? Like discretionary spend, people aren't spending money on leadership training. They just want to keep their lights on right now. Like I am screwed. I remember thinking that. And I had just rebranded from an HR company to a leadership development company, from Power HR to PowerUp Leadership. And I remember thinking, man, this is the worst time to have done that. And then I stopped myself and I thought, you know what? Maybe it's the best time to have done this, because I'm going to have a little bit of time to really spend on strategy, investing time in building world-class training resources, collateral, a methodology that I know works better than Covey's, better than any other of the big names, better than Korn Ferry. And I got time to refine it because I'm not busy in delivery. As soon as I made that mental switch, it was like I was creative again, and I was able to get to work and not be stuck in like fear, basically.
Yeah. I guess the fear can be kind of like paralyzing and just like preventing you from moving forward, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So what are your objectives for the business right now? Like the next 3 to 5 years, how are you kind of approaching it?
A PowerUp Leadership, but we are massively growing. We're growing very quickly, and we're approaching it by really focusing on private equity backed companies. So we work with a lot of portfolio based companies that are accelerating, and they need to accelerate their growth based on the targets that are set by the operating partners at these PE firms. So we work with those clients to help them retain their employees through leadership development. And we are really clear on how do you measure talent effectiveness? How do you show the return on that and protect that talent so that you're able to maximize the exit price when you're bought out in 2 years, if that's what the plan is. And that's really our sweet spot, working with those high growth PE backed companies.
Okay, interesting. And so like, have you ever thought about like selling the business, or you know what I'm saying? Do you have like sort of an end game?
Eventually, I plan to stick around for at least another, God willing, for another 25 years. And my dream world, and I think this is probably going to happen, one of my staff will buy the business as a successor. So I'll have years to, build that client goodwill and get them trained up and all of that. So that's the goal.
Cool. Where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch? Do you do any kind of like advising of people, or like who would be a good fit for PowerUp in terms of companies?
Definitely private equity backed companies, small to medium size, hyper growth businesses, CEOs for executive coaching. PowerUpLeadership.ca is our website, and we have a ton of free downloadable coaching resources there for free that people can just plug in their email and access different resources like the power of saying no, or career values based exercise. And folks are welcome to set up a 30-minute complimentary coaching chemistry call if they want to tap into private coaching, or they can sign up for our free Coaching Skills for Managers masterclass that happens once a week. So it's all on our website, and I sent you the link, Chris, if you want to put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the notes, yeah.
Yeah, that would be super.
Cool. Susan, thanks so much for coming on. Guys, the One Network. We'll drop the links in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.